Leading a startup team? Whether you're delivering a sugar rush, stocking coffee, or getting a regular delivery of snacks, Office Depot has solutions that fit every startup culture, from getting those first business cards and stationery to ordering fleece pullovers with your new logo. To learn how Office Depot and the California Technology Council have partnered to bring you savings on all of these startup essentials and more, go to californiatechnology.org/member benefits. I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. People with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder who use stimulants to treat the condition often face afternoon crashes and require the use of booster doses. Cingulate Therapeutics is using its proprietary drug delivery technology to target this $14 billion market with timed-release formulations of commonly used ADHD drugs it's developing. We spoke to Shane Schaffer, CEO of Cingulate, about ADHD, the company's drug delivery technology, and its clinical path forward.
Shane, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Daniel.
We're going to talk about your company, Cingulate Therapeutics, ADHD, and how you're seeking to use your drug delivery platform technology to improve treatments. Perhaps we can start with ADHD itself. What is it? How common is it, and how does it manifest itself?
Sure, certainly. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. So ADHD is a very significant neurobiological disorder, and quite frankly, it does affect, depending on various different studies, anywhere from about 6 to 10% of children and adolescents, as well as up to 6 to 10% of adults. A lot of people think of ADHD as a disorder that people outgrow. And while that can happen sometimes, most likely what that is just really a life selection process where you do things that ADHD does not impact your life as much as it does in potential childhood when you're in a classroom setting. ADHD has really three key components in terms of its overall effect and diagnosis. There's components of inattentiveness, impulsivity, and then, of course, hyperactivity. And those three things are pretty apparent for both genders as well as for adolescents, children, and adults. Now, however, there are some subtle differences in the boys versus girls. Girls are less hyperactive than boys in certain instances, and the hyperactivity also dissipates in adulthood. So the really impactful part, though, is the fact that people are inattentive. They have a lot of potential social impacts, as well as obviously through education and things like that. So it's a growing disorder in terms of its diagnosis. I mean, it's not really changing because it's genetic basis to it, but it definitely does impact a lot of people in the United States and around the world.
How is it diagnosed today?
So the best way for diagnosis to occur definitely is a multi-phasic sort of approach where psychiatrists, so those can be child, adolescent, or adult psychiatrists, developmental pediatricians, psychologists definitely, so a very well-trained medical expert in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And what they do is they use different rating scales and different approaches where they not only talk to the patient, but they also talk to the spouse of that patient, if it's an adult, or the parents, or school teachers, or coworkers. And using these different rating scales, look at a lot of the different attributes of those three components that we mentioned earlier. It's not something that's diagnosed in one day. It's something that we look at over time, and then at that point, physicians would make the decision after that extensive evaluation what is the best treatment course for patients. And that typically includes non-pharmacological treatment, so education and that type of training, and then oftentimes as well it will include pharmacological therapy.
And in terms of pharmacological therapy, what options are available today?
Sure. So there's really two classes of the drugs that are used to treat ADHD. There's the stimulant class and the non-stimulants. pretty sophisticated there, huh? Stimulant, non-stimulant. The stimulants compose of really two categories. You have your methylphenidate class. Think of your Ritalins, your Concertos, your Vocalins, and then your amphetamine class. And I think of Vyvanse, Dexedrine, and Adderall. Those two classes encompass greater than 90% of all prescriptions written in the ADHD category. The non-stimulants are about 7% of the classes of therapy. That includes drugs like Strattera, Intuniv, Guanfacine, Clonidine, but they're definitely more second-line treatment for ADHD.
And how effective are these in treating the condition?
The stimulant class is tremendously effective, which is really why it's it's about 93% of the overall marketplace. Stimulants have been used to treat ADHD for 50 plus years, and they've been used very safely, very effectively. There's incredible amounts of data on the safety and effectiveness of these medications. However, ironically, even after all these years of treatment with these drugs, ideal therapy, which encompasses something that sort of works immediately, lasts the entire active day for these patients, which would be their full day, sort of from home to homework or from breakfast to dinner for adults, and a product that also has a nice, smooth descent so they don't have a potential untoward rebound or a crash. That drug has not been developed yet in our perspective.
Help me understand why a stimulant might help someone with ADHD. What is happening at the biological level that these stimulants do?
Sure. And it really is a strange name for a drug, because you would think someone that is hyperactive, giving them a stimulant it's sort of counterintuitive, right? The way these drugs work is they have they block receptors for dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin to a lesser extent. They block the reuptake receptors. So what happens in an individual with ADHD is genetically their brain was coded to have more reuptake mechanisms to take those neurotransmitters out of the game, so to speak, faster than need be. So what these drugs do is they go in there and they basically tell that receptor, hey, calm down for a little bit. We'll let these neurotransmitters stay in the brain a little bit longer, and then we'll move them on their way. And that's basically how they work in a very simplistic perspective. The challenge is that it's a very fast timetable. So the drugs don't work and last as long as we'd like them to get patients through that entire day to give them the duration they need. So that's why a lot of patients for years and years have taken 1, 2, 3, and sometimes 4 doses throughout the day. Now, there have been a lot of nice advances starting in the late 90s where drugs were biphasically designed that would deliver 2 doses of drug throughout the day at given time intervals to avoid that short-acting aspect of the medication.
How does your drug delivery technology work to address both the problem of the initial delivery of the drug, but also to keep a steady supply of the drug actively available in a patient's system throughout the day?
Yeah, sure. So what we did, and I started this company with Drs. Raul Silva, Dr. Matt Brahms, and they're two of the sort of leading key opinion leaders in ADHD, and we were looking at trying to find a way to deliver a 3rd dose of drug effectively and do it in a very precise manner so that the drugs would be delivered at the right time in the right amount, so the right ratio of drug release throughout the given day. What we designed is a drug development platform called Precision Timed Release Drug Delivery Technology. And what that allows us to do is deliver the 3 doses, and we have 2 assets in development. One of them, the CTX-1301, is a dexmethylphenidate product, so the pure isomer of Ritalin, trade name Vocalin, a product I actually worked on back at Novartis when I was much younger. Our second product is dextroamphetamine, again, the single isomer, the D isomer of the Adderall drug, trade name Dextrin. And what the precision time release platform allows us to do is deliver a dose of drug immediately. So within 5 minutes, drug will be in solution in the body and working its way into the bloodstream, and we have a targeted effect. So what we're hoping to find in our clinical trials is that this drug will be working within 30 minutes, and that's exactly what we expect will happen. That's exactly what happens with Focalin when given immediately. What we then have the ability to do within this small tablet, we have a partnership with the company, and they have a fantastic erosion barrier layer called Oralogic. And what Oralogic is sort of a secret sauce that allows us to very precisely time when this next release will occur. So we have a 4-hour lag period where absolutely no drug is released into the system. And then after that 4 hours, the PTR delivery system, precision time release, delivers a sustained release now of a second dose of medication, either the amphetamine or the methylphenidate product, depending on which one your physician prescribes. And it gives a 90-minute sustained release of that second dose of drug, so that patients have two things. Number one, the drug didn't come down to a level that was not effective, but then they have a nice ascending profile pharmacokinetically where drug is delivered over 90 minutes. It also avoids the big peaks and valleys, which can sometimes be troublesome for patients with ADHD. So that's the second dose. And that's been accomplished in many ways with drugs like Adderall XR, Focalin XR, Concerta, etc. But the key here is now we have another oralogic barrier that is wrapped around that second dose, and it gives us another 4-hour delay where precisely no drug is released, which is how you want it in ADHD, and then what would be hour 8 from after ingestion, we deliver a third dose of drug. And we deliver not a full dose, because that would be too much in our opinion, but instead a nice, small, what we call a booster, that's built into this tablet, this small tablet, and that then does two things. It slows down the rate of descent, and hopefully extends the potential efficacy of this drug so that it allows the patient to get full-day efficacy for their ADHD symptoms.
How predictable is the release of the drug from patient to patient? We're at this point where we're being trained to think of drug interactions being very personalized for each patient. Is that true with delivery technology?
Yep, so it's a great question, Dan. And one of the things that we've seen with all of the stimulants, which is it's quite replicatable, is a patient can have different blood levels of the same exact drug. So I'm talking the same patient. I could take, let's say I have ADHD, and I'm going to take our product or take a competitor product, any of them, 5 days in a row. And I eat the same exact meal 5 days in a row. Each of those 5 days, I will have different blood levels. It's really, it's called intra-patient variability. So that happens with all the stimulants. What we've done and what we've worked on with the precision time release platform is in vitro, so now we're in test tubes basically, we do see a tremendously precise, very tight correlation every single time of how the drug is timed and released. So we can control it there, but I tell you, once you put it into the human body, quite frankly, you will see different pharmacokinetic profiles. And that's pharmacokinetics. The actual pharmacodynamics in terms of how the patients respond to treatment, again, pretty much universally across the board for all of the products, not just ours, but for all the products. When that product goes into dissolution, you start to see an effect. And so that variability doesn't seem to have much of a clinical impact. But again, I can't speak for every patient, but instead for the larger proportions of society, that really doesn't have much of an impact. And it's quite moderate.
As you mentioned earlier, you have 2 candidates in development. What do we know from studies to date?
So thus far, we've done a proof of concept study where we wanted to prove the overall philosophy behind our the precision time release platform and the oralogic erosion barrier layer. That study we conducted with 15 healthy adults. We used pharmacokinetics to look at the blood levels, and we coupled that with pharmacoscintigraphy, where we actually radio-labeled certain elements of our tablet to see exactly where the drug was being released in the GI system. The results of that trial, we've actually shown now to 2 sets of advisors, and we've also presented it at 3 large pharmaceutical meetings focusing on pharmaceutical sciences and ADHD. The data has been tremendously well received. It truly did show a very fast uptake of the medication in blood levels, showed a nice, smooth, sort of small little pumps in the pharmacokinetics, basically a small up and a small down, followed by the second ascending profile for the second dose. And then we found as the drug was declining, as you would expect it to, and 1 or 2 later in the evening, it did 2 things. Number 1, the rate of descent changed from, say, a 60-degree angle in terms of the way it was falling to about a 35-degree. And we like to sort of talk about that as trying to land an airplane on an aircraft carrier or landing it on a nice runway at, let's think of a nice airport. I've flown into some tight ones lately. But that's sort of the comparison. And so basically what we were hoping to see there, and again, this will have to be flushed out in our efficacy trials, we hope to see that makes a nice, smoother decline for patients. And it translates into hopefully better overall feelings for these patients and extended efficacy as well. So we saw that push out.
Given that these are well-studied and well-known compounds at the heart of these drugs, is there a faster route to approval? What's the clinical path forward?
Yeah, exactly. The FDA has been great in terms of working with them, and they obviously understand these are approved drugs, and they have a system in place for an accelerated sort of pathway. It's called the 505(b)(2) drug development pathway. What I always say, it allows us to stand on the shoulders of giants and then improve their drugs a little bit. And that's exactly what we're doing. Both Focalin and Dextran have been around for dozens of years. They're great medications, and they've been approved multiple times in different formulations. So this process allows us the ability to, number 1, from a time perspective, get these drugs through development in 24 to 36 months versus 8 to 10 years for a new pharmaceutical development project. In addition to that, from a capital perspective, a very nice benefit, which translates into our ability to price these drugs effectively. We're in a position where this will cost us a fraction of the cost, versus the $1.5 to $2 billion it costs to develop a brand new medication. So those 2 advantages are really tremendous. But the thing we like the most is we can improve these products, hopefully create an ideal targeted ADHD agent for these patients, and at the same time get them to market quickly.
And how about from an IP perspective? What kind of protection do you expect to have on these?
So there's a lot of different ways to look at exclusivity. It's one of the ways we kind of like to talk about it. There's obviously the Hatch-Waxman gives us about 3 years of exclusivity, but that's not a tremendous amount, but that's nice, and that's guaranteed due to the phase 3 studies we're doing. In addition to that, the oral logic erosion barrier layer has some fantastic IP around it, and that extends well over a dozen years. In addition to that, we've filed our own patents, which we're currently in the process of working with the Patent and Trademark Office with, that really focus on the unique delivery system that we have, the unique drug ratio we use. We don't give, like a third. We have a much more unique profile because we want to treat the disorder appropriately, as well as the sustained release that we use in the middle allows us some pretty unique innovations that we believe that will hopefully give Cingulate direct patents on these 2 ADHD products. The third element is some of the trade secrets we have around our manufacturing process. We have some very sophisticated tooling, as well as some sophisticated machinery, which allows us to achieve making this multi-dose tablet very effectively and very efficiently. We believe in the last month we've created potentially the first 5-layer, 3-dose tablet the world has ever seen. And it's a pretty small tablet. We shared it with advisors yesterday here out at the ACAT meeting. They were pretty impressed with what they saw.
How might pricing compare to traditional formulations of these drugs, and how much of a challenge do you see convincing patients, physicians, or payers of the value of what you're offering?
Yeah, there's no question that building a great drug is a nice first start, and that's what you have to do, is build a better, good medication. But you have to make sure that these products get reimbursed and that patients have access to them. So at Cingulate Therapeutics, we take a very serious look at that, and we have a market access team that is already built to make sure that we look at, number one, not only just the pricing. Oftentimes it comes down to just, what's the least expensive for the payer, and we realize that's important, and we want to make sure that we're good citizens in making sure that we price these products effectively. So that's number one. We'll obviously have very competitive pricing, and I think our manufacturing does some very unique benefits in terms of the effectiveness we can have in terms of pricing. So we hope to see that pan out as we get closer to commercialization. But in addition to that, I think the overall efficacy story that we're going to bring and some of the patient-reported outcomes as well as some of the pharmacoeconomic impact that we see in terms of patients that need to take a third dose that just wouldn't have to do with our product. Our product has all 3 doses built right into that tablet. And what's happening is about 60% of adults and adolescents that have ADHD are actually using what's called booster doses. And I think the impact of that to the managed care system, and not only to that, but to the to the patients, is really quite impactful. Patients have to wait until they start to feel less than ideal, and then they reach in their pocket and take a short-acting stimulant product. That's not ideal therapy. That's 2 prescriptions versus 1, 2 copays in some instances. I think those types of things are things that we're going to need to build a good story around, and then build some dollars and cents around it as well to make sure people see the true overall value of our products. But long story short, it's critical to make sure we have good managed care reimbursement.
Shane Schaffer, CEO of Cingulate Therapeutics. Shane, thanks so much for your time today.
Hey, my pleasure, Daniel. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send an email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.